Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on our webinar as we talk about how to ship faster with AI. We have today's conversation is going to be hosted by the president of our Dallas enterprise, David O'Hara, and is going to involve a conversation with Bill Curry, our vice president of consulting with Improving. And so, gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So looking forward to our talk today and to be hosting this. I'm going to introduce this talk series, what it is we will be discussing as we move through the month of October. I hope that you will join us for each of those sessions. And then Bill is going to share the current state of AI and what it is we're seeing, some of the things that are going on in the industry. And then we're going to sit and talk a little bit about the impacts that we're seeing on AI, both individually and collectively in the industry. And then we'll wrap up talking a little bit more, setting the stage with the business problem that will be the thread we carry forward through this series the rest of the month. And so we're looking forward to this time. Speaking of the talk series, the rest of the series, we will continue as we share how we are leveraging an existing system that we have here in Improving. We call it the Engage platform, something that we built in-house, and we're going to demonstrate by dogfooding on it, building a feature with AI. So this is not going to be some hypothetical talk. This is going to be a real and actual development done by us. You see the dates there, October 8th, October 15th, the 22nd and the 29th, as we progress in building that feature. So I hope that you will join us. For now, though, I'm going to pass it over to my friend Bill and let him talk to us about the current state of AI.
Hey, everybody. The intent of this next phase is really to talk through where we're at in AI today. I'm hoping everybody on the call has some idea of AI, so we'll jump right in here. And the first thing we want to hit is we want to put aside the misconceptions of Skynet and the opposite, which is, hey, AI is going to replace all of our jobs. We're actually going to talk about that in this discussion today. We'll talk through a little bit of both of these, mostly the one on the right-hand side of the screen here. It is something that as developers, we're going to be facing. We have to understand where the industry is going and the impact it's going to have on our jobs as developers and what we need to do to be better prepared for it. We're hoping this talk series actually helps everybody with that. But let's hop into kind of where we're at today. So this is the hype cycle chart that is common in the industry. It starts with, hey, new technology occurs in the bottom left-hand corner, and we go through this great, everybody is super excited and overexcited about what the technology is going to bring, and then we realize it's not quite what we thought it was going to be, and we go through this trough of disillusionment. And then typically you come out of that, you actually start to realize, well, it actually does do some things that are helpful. That's the slope of enlightenment. That's how we learn to use the tools the right way. And then going forward, we've got this increased productivity out of that technology from where we were originally. So if we go and say, where are we at from AI today? I think everybody would agree with where we're at today with chatbots. Chatbots have been out for several years now, had a ton of inflated expectations, and it's actually on that falling down into the trough, I would say. I think most of the people in the industry would agree with this statement that you're seeing an overuse of chatbots. Chatbots became the sledgehammer. Just go ask your chatbot and get it to answer your question, to the point where people weren't doing agents and other things we're going to be talking about in this call. And as we start to learn, hey, there's other ways to achieve that, we'll start to realize the real use for chatbots, and we'll go through that slope of enlightenment, and we'll still probably use them going forward. The next is agentic AI. So how do I use agents to actually do the work for me? Let me have those agents automate my tasks is really what we're talking about here. And I would say today, this is right at that peak of inflated expectations. We've seen a lot of information about it. We're hearing a lot. We're starting to see the media and the press get excited about it, which really puts us on, at least on the slope upward on the peak of inflated expectations. We're going to say we're probably at the hype of that, and we're going to start to fall down into the trough here shortly as people start using it more and more. I want to step further on this one, and I actually want to talk about coding agents. This is really agentic AI at the end of the day. It's very specific to a developer's use. I put it still on the upslope. And the reason I did it is I don't believe that everybody today who's a developer is actually taking advantage of agents. I think people are still experimenting and deciding if they're going to do agents. So I think we haven't really hit that peak of inflated expectations. The mass of developers aren't interested in this yet today. Some are, and it will continue, I think, to go up on the expectations. And then we'll hit the same, hey, there are challenges here we have to deal with. So high level, that's kind of where we think we are from a hype cycle today. The next thing we do want to talk a little bit about is it okay to be a laggard? Is it okay to not be at the front end of this? And we agree there's a chasm here between the early adopters and the early majority, where people start to figure out, how can I best use this? If you're an early adopter, you're going to pay a lot of extra capital. That could be people's time, that could be money, to actually take advantage of the technology. Today, we're still in this early adopter phase on the AI side of things. So we're in this today, figuring out the chasm of how do we actually get into where the majority of people are actually leveraging AI. And I think that's truly the case on the development side. You're going to see from improving, our viewpoint is we want to be on these new technologies in that early adopter phase to help our customers. Being a little bit ahead on the thinking on this and actually helping to understand the technology, helping our customers understand what is possible is important from our viewpoint with our customers. We want to make sure we're doing the right thing. So as a result, we're a little bit in that early adopter side. Each customer, each person on this call, you need to make your own decision of, hey, should we be an early adopter of AI, or can we wait a little while for other people to understand and make it better before we jump on? Now we get into the real busy slide. Where are we today? And so this is really all of the notable AI models. This is interesting. I bring this up just because of the amount of change that has occurred and the amount of effort it's actually taking to actually do AI the way we're doing it today. If you look on the bottom left-hand side, you're in the 1950s is where you started, and you see a very small number of the amount of flops that are needed from a compute perspective in order to do what that system did. That was a mouse system that had a series of switches that would flip to help a mouse get through a maze. That's really what that was. I think it had 10 switches on it. Fairly simple technology, so you can understand the computing was pretty minimal. You go up here to the right, and it's important to notice a couple of things happening. One, we went from 1 to the 20th, or to the 2nd, sorry, to today we're at 1 to the 26th. That's 26 zeros. We're talking about a ton of compute needed in order to support the creation of these models and actually get these models built. So you can see GPT, this goes all the way up until GP, I believe 5 is not on this yet. This goes up to 4 or 5 on this graph. But this early 2025, you can see the amount of effort. It's costing a lot to build these models. So that's the thing we need to be aware of. The next piece I'll go to, though, is this slide, which is a realization now when I use these models, the price to use them is coming way down. This is actually the key reason why we think it's the right time to start talking about why should you and how should you use AI in your development processes. So the fact that the price is coming down so low, it's now meaningful and worthwhile for developers to look at, hey, how do I automate the simple tasks that I'm doing on a daily basis and let AI handle those tasks because the cost is dropping so rapidly. The next we'll talk about a little bit is labor compression in technology. And this one is really, what can we automate in our daily tasks to make it easier for us to get the work done? And what we're seeing is AI can do this today. As AI gets better, we're going to continue to see more and more of this reduction of the amount of the time that it's going to take for us to write our code, write our unit tests, create the CI/CD pipelines. We're going to show you that in the series. So that is the whole intent of this series, is to let you see, hey, is this real or not? And as Dave said, we're going to do this live. This will be, you'll see us doing it. You'll get a feeling for, hey, where it's good and where it may not be good yet. And we're in that early adopter phase today. So it is the appropriate time to be looking at this and saying, hey, what's good and what's not? So we'll look at this, and we want to, again, we're trying to figure out how much will this compress our activities as developers as we're trying to roll out a new feature into our product. I will add one thing here. It's relevant from a time piece. This last bullet, workers must adapt to new skills to stay relevant in the workforce. This is something we all have to be aware of. Accenture, Dave and I will talk about this more in a minute, but Accenture actually just did a recent announcement laying off large portion of their workforce that they didn't believe that they could get to reskill into leveraging AI. So this isn't AI is going to replace, AI is going to enhance what we do, but we need to know how to use AI and stay pertinent and understand where AI can be used to help us be successful. So if we look, and I didn't quite build the way I wanted it, but that's fine. If we take a look, if this is a developer, these are development tasks that you see across the top of the screen here. Typically, if I go across here and say, hey, this is my time to design what I'm going to build, and then the next couple blocks are, hey, I'm going to build it, I'm going to test it, and I get my next user story that I'm going to work on. I'm going to work on the design, I'm going to build it, I'm going to test it. If we look at this and say, hey, where's AI going to help? We can actually think of it as, hey, these orange blocks are redundant tasks that we do a lot. Now, we can have a conversation about how much redundant is it, how easy it is, but we do know today that AI can write CRUD operations for me in code very well. It can do refactoring extremely well. So if these are the type of activities I'm doing, I'm going to get some compression. How much compression? Bound to be seen, still to be seen, but we'll go through this process and understand how much compression we can actually get. By doing this, we're actually going to see that our timeline is reducing. All of this time is now extra time that we have available to do more work. And David and I are going to talk through, okay, what do we do with that time? Is that something that, just goes away? And now that I don't need as many developers? We'll talk through that here. The big piece that we are looking at this is, how do you figure out what should I spend time automating? What is a good place to actually automate tasks instead of continuing to do those tasks manually? I mentioned that, this could be design, which AI, we're going to show you, can help us a little bit in design. So we'll show you in this series that. But these two were coding and testing that we believe today you can't automate well. How do you determine what can be automated well? So we'll kind of jump into that. So we're going to look at this graph with two pieces. One is time impact, and the other is demand limit. So the time impact is how much effort does it take? How much time does it take me to do that task? The demand limit is, how often does this thing come up? Is this something that I do once a year? That's a low limit. It doesn't happen that often. I'm not going to get much payout by going and automating that task. If this is something I do every single day, that's a high limit, and I'll get a ton of value by automating it. So at Improving, we looked at our three main type of roles that we have inside of Improving. The accounting clerk has a lot of high impact, but low limit, and a little bit of high impact and high limit. A software developer, you actually see has it's more in that upper right corner where we see the activities being done, but we also do see a ton down here on the bottom on the low impact. And then finally, our sales team. So as we look at this, you say, what should we be automating? What should we be focusing on? That top right corner is where we want to automate it more. We're going to get value. It's going to have impact. We want to actually automate that and reduce the amount of time and do it on these tasks that we do over and over and over again that take us a large amount of time. So automate that corner. Make sure you focus on that area first. That's going to be the big payout. That top left corner, we may have a situation where we have to reduce headcount, retrain, grow the role, make those people in those roles do a little bit more because we don't need as much of them anymore. And then scale the headcount. If we're in this high, we're not getting any value on this bottom side of actually going out and automating it. We don't do enough of this. And the value is very minimal. So this just may be, hey, add more headcount. And finally, this bottom left corner today, until AI or other tools get more effective for us, just don't do anything with them. Those, as we're looking at these tasks, don't spend a ton of time trying to automate those in the left-hand corner. You're not going to get the payout. So hopefully this shows where you can focus. Go look for those big tasks that happen a lot. That's where you want to start looking at, hey, how can I automate these and use AI to help? Those are what we'll be hitting in this series.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. So I want to start us off in our conversation going back to that slide where you had the cartoon, right? Where the AI assistant fires the guy because he's automated everything. And like, that's the big question that I think we hear a lot is, will AI replace me as a developer?
Yeah, I think most people today will look at this and say, hey, it can't fully. And it's easy to say AI can't write code, and therefore I'm going to need developers. AI is getting better and better at writing code. It still doesn't do a perfect job. You still have to, as a human, go back and take a look at what was done. and understand that it did the right thing. There is some effort as a developer to maybe up our game a little bit. We may have to change what we do if we really go into this and say, hey, I'm going to still be around, but maybe I'm not writing as much code manually today. I may actually be leveraging AI to write the code for me.
Gotcha. So I like how, as developers, we need to pay attention to like, what is our compressible work, right? Like code generation. Like if you can help me write code faster, yeah, that's compressible. But like the uncompressible work that we do is, let me understand the problem. Let me assemble a solution, the true thinking that needs to go in, and the creativity that is potentially there, that creative act of developing a system. It continues to be there. There's no creativity without biology. So the math that all this is doing is not going to suddenly make it creative. And so it's not necessarily going to make our job go away. And I think one of the analogies that I've heard used before is, if you think about it, if you went and had a backlog of all these features for a product and snapped your fingers and all those features were done and they're in the system, right? And then the next day you show up, what's the first thing the product owner is going to do? Fill the backlog with new stuff, right? And so you're going to move to the next level of complexity, the next level of effort. And it's not going to make everything go away. It's just going to have to elevate us, like you were saying, right? We're going to have to elevate our skills.
But I think if we look at like the UI design, let's take that side for a second, because that one's interesting, and it's in that creative space you were talking about, David. Of, hey, how can I use AI to get a little more creative? I'll be honest, I'm a back end dev. I can't do UI at all. I'm not good at it. I'll admit it. Anybody who's ever seen my systems will agree with that. But write back end code, I can do it. So this is where it starts to get interesting. One, I should have a UI person on the team with me, but I can leverage AI to help me get ideas. And then I think where you get interesting in that non-compressible is, I got to take those ideas to the business and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Does this work for you? And refine it, come back. Even in those tools where we say you need the creative and you need the human to do it, I think leveraging tools to get quicker cycles through that, it's still going to happen. I think you're going to end up doing that and leveraging these AI tools to say, hey, here's a look of what the AI might look like or the UI might look like, and come back and do 3 or 4 or 5 or maybe even 10, where in the past maybe you did 1 or 2. That's all you had time to do. Is we got to get moving on this. Now with AI, I might be able to do 10. I think the time's going to be the same. The amount of effort's going to be the same. It's just we may be giving the business more opportunities and shots to go say, yeah, I like that, or no, tweak it to do this instead. Maybe we catch things earlier. I don't know if that's going to happen, but maybe by doing this extra time or extra cycles, because it's not really extra time, we actually get a better result for the business on the back end.
Great. Yeah, so I hear you saying, we need to use it to ideate, right? To brainstorm and to be that partner as we're working through some of our problems. What are some of the other skills that we see developers needing to grow or even build as we use these agents?
Yeah, it's interesting. As we look and say, let's assume for a second, let's jump to the conclusion that AI can write a good portion of my code. I still have to go review it. I still have to go look at it. And if we go look at I'm going to take an entry level developer. They haven't had the number of hours of writing code and reviewing code and gotten those best practices to understand this is the right way to write code. And now we're in this world, we should be expecting that no, they're going to review the code that AI has actually developed. How do I take a junior developer or an entry level developer and actually get them to get that experience? I think this is where we had to start looking at, how do we change our processes? How do we adjust to do more? Today we do, in those entry level developer cases, we do a lot of peer development. Sit down beside, and we're going to write code together, or paired programming, right? We do that today. We're just going to elevate that and say, okay, maybe it's not a paired programming. Maybe it's a model where I'm doing paired review, so that the entry level people can actually learn, hey, this is what I look for in a good design. This is what I look for in good code. Because we still have to have that trigger to say, hey, that was good code that AI wrote, or no, it's really bad and I need to refine it.
Yeah. And I like what you said there, because I think it's really important for us to think about those who are coming after us, right?
Right.
These younger folks that are coming into the industry, there's no growth without friction, right? You got to have that friction to develop muscle memory, to develop, a gut experience. And if your crutch is let the agent generate the code for me, you're never going to develop that. And so how we help our more junior folks to grow that capability so that when we are reviewing, we can see and they can see how it is we look at it, right? So you can see when, I know for me, there have been a couple times where the agents generated something that doesn't make sense architecturally from a maintenance perspective. But how do I know that? Well, because I've done that and it was terrible. And I ended up having to clean that mess up. And, after cleaning up a few messes, you learn not to make messes. And so what are some of the ways that in using this, maybe we can help those younger folks to recognize potential messes?
Yeah, and it is that doing a paired programming. I think there's also, I don't want to use the word prompt engineering here because it's not a role, but all of us have to learn how to be better at writing prompts and understand here's how I get out of the AI system, whatever AI system I'm using. The unfortunate part is I think every AI system is going to have a different sweet point where they actually do a good job of handling that and handling what you're asking for. But at the end of the day, we have to, as users, understand how to use the technology that we have in our hands. And that includes now the AI. How do I get AI to go do that? So there is, even on the front end, there's going to be this paired mindset of, hey, let me sit down with a more senior person. Let me understand how to do this. And we can go take courses too. There's some of that we can do and cover both sides of how do I leverage it to help build out my backlog and build out my code to the other side, which is how do I review the work that's been done to make sure it's actually been done correctly. Part of it's a combination of paired programming type of techniques as well as better training on AI and better training on how do I leverage the AI to the most effective way possible. So Coursera and Udemy and other courses that may be out there, I think will help in those areas.
Great. We have a question.
Yes. So we have a question from the audience, and it comes to Bill's slides did a very good job of showing the incredibly rapid rate of growth of AI over the last several years. And so this could lead someone in a product development role to go, why would I build this feature now, right? And have developers build this feature now when in X months AI is going to do that for me, right? And so this story of, do I just wait for the technology to come around and lap to the point where it could do this feature, right? How do you answer that tension in that space?
David, you want to take a swat first? Or want me to jump in on this one?
You go ahead, and then I'll fill in any holes.
Yeah, I think it's dangerous to wait for technology to be able to take that on completely. I don't believe that we're anywhere close today where AI will be able to do it on its own completely. So I think you're always going to have a developer there to help guide to get to the right solution. That knowledge of how do the pieces parts come together, I don't think can be replaced. And I don't know that we're anywhere close. So that's kind of that. I got Skynet. It just took over and it does everything that we had on our very first slide. We're a long time away from AI being able to get to that level and the technology get to that level. There's another piece of this which we talk a lot about, which is the business processes and the technology kind of go hand in hand. As you're building out a feature, the business starts to realize, wait, if I can do that, I could do this. And there's a growth that occurs by those two going in unison. I think by waiting on the technology, you're going to hold up the business process as well, and that's not going to get a chance to evolve. And so the end result is you end up being further behind the curve a year and a half from now, 2 years ago, when AI is more capable of doing some of these things, and your business hasn't advanced to be able to take advantage of what you can bring them. I think you end up missing the potential of what the business could have achieved. I don't know, David, if you have anything to add to that.
I think you said that great. A couple things that I would add, and folks have heard me say this, like I haven't been this excited about our industry since the 90s.
Yeah.
And I'm old enough that I recall when the internet was showing up and it was like, oh my gosh, this is going to change our business. Now, myriads of ways that it could have changed our business and that people were betting massive amounts of money on that did not pan out. that didn't happen. And we all know the dot-com burst and everything that happened. We are in a similar space where AI is going to change our business. We don't know all the ways it will. We can't predict that. And so, like the unknown of will it actually show up in a couple of months and do the thing that I want it to do? Maybe it's possible. And to Bill's point, if you wait and you're wrong, now you're even further behind. The other thing that I would throw in there is if you think the feature that is going to be your business differentiator is going to be succumb to AI in just a couple of months, it's probably not something you want to bet your business on. I don't think that's really a definitive business differentiator. And so that there you may want to look and say, all right, what is a more meaningful feature? And then again, innovation happens through experimentation.
Yep.
What is the experiments that you are going to run to move into that space like Bill was talking about?
Yeah, this is that early laggard to early majority. This is that chasm. This is where we find out certain things don't work well. The dot-com bust is a great example. I did hear and I'm going to mess up the quote. I probably shouldn't speak it here, but I'm going to anyway. How rapidly AI has grown and had impact globally. A lot of the internet stuff happened in the US first, and I believe it was 20 years before we reached 80%. I think are the numbers. These are the numbers I'm worried about. It took about 20 years before 80% of the world was actually leveraging the internet. AI has done that is on a much faster scale to actually complete that, to where 80% of the world is leveraging AI. This is 3 years ago, essentially 4 years ago, that GPT came out. That would be the beginning of RAG AI that we're talking about in many of these cases. AI has been around for a long time, but the RAG AI, if you talk in a 3-year, 4-year cycles, people are starting to use it now worldwide already. A much faster, rapid adoption of that technology, which just actually helps. It means more people are using it. You're going to get more innovation, more mindset to help you get there. But it's still going to take you time to get there and use it the right way. You got to iterate on these and do that experimentation to get better at it.
So, Bill, you mentioned global and improving as a global company. So this is very relevant to us, but talk a little bit about what do you think some of the impacts to, devs that are maybe, in different time zones or offshore, some of these other models of work that we have.
Yeah, this gets interesting, and this is you can see multiple paths, right? So there's initial conclusions I had reached, and I'm not sure if these are going to happen or not, but it's a good discussion of if today what I'm seeing is the developer experience, those tasks that AI can do are being automated, and I'm not writing as much code. Let's jump to the big conclusion of I'm not writing hardly any code. I'm reviewing code. I'm not writing tests. I'm reviewing the tests. I'm reviewing design, maybe guiding the design. At that point, we start to get into the question of there's been a large push over the last 20 years in the industry for offshore and nearshore models. And I think as we look at those models, how effective have we been at those developers who are in these other time zones doing the work now that can't be compressed? Are they doing the compressible work? Are they doing the entire development lifecycle? I've seen in some situations where, no, we're really giving the offshore developers or even nearshore developers, we're giving those activities that are in the compressible space by what we're seeing from AI. So that starts to become interesting of what happens to those offshore and nearshore developers. I think they're going to have to skill up and make sure they're having conversations with the business and involved in those things that can't be compressed in order to continue to be effective and provide help to the industry.
Yeah, and to your point you made earlier, I think because the things that are compressible, you made the little graph slide over, that means there's going to be more that is done. And I've always said the person that is the architect on your project is the one with their hands on the keyboard, right? They're the ones that are actually developing the architecture as they're laying down the code. And if we sped up the code, that means our architecture can evolve much quicker. Yeah, either for the positive or for the negative. And so how we help those folks to build those skills, I think it is going to be a very important part of what this next phase looks like.
The big thing with that I'll call out here is there's still that question of, okay, I'm a developer. Is it eliminating my job? And I think you're hearing and everything we're talking about, it's not eliminating your job. I think it's really elevating your game, the role that you have as a developer, raising it up a little bit and taking away those mundane tasks that a lot of us don't like. I mean, do I really want to go write another CRUD operation for a new entity? How many of us have done that, 100 times? How many of us done this 5 times already this week? Let's not do that anymore. Let AI do those pieces, but there's still a ton of other valuable code we're working on, and it's this architecture, to your point. Everybody now becomes an architect. All the developers are now an architect, not just the top level developers. I've got to make sure everybody is having that impact and thinking that way throughout the life cycle of the development of our product.
Yeah, and there's probably some fun ways that you could even, leverage its ability to do that in this pair fashion, like you said. Have it go write the test, and then you write the code, or you go write the test, have it write the code, and do some of that ping ponging that some of us older folks remember.
That's actually interesting because you're hitting on where we've got to be creative in the industry to actually realize, hey, here's an effective way to actually do this. I'm not going to rely on AI to write the code and test the code. We're going to come up with this way. And we test it and we do our trials and we come back and say, hey, it was really effective or it wasn't really effective. We find out that there's other ways to do it. I know there's a lot of work being done today on spec-driven development. What this basically is fully writing out your spec of your code of what you're expected in your code to help AI and let AI have access to your repo. It understands where to look in the repo for that spec, those specs, knows where to look to go get the history and the other previous decisions that have been made so it can actually do a good job. So now we end up spending a whole bunch more time on the spec side of things rather than the code side of things, which may be good. This is the thing we've got to figure out here in the next year, 2 years is, hey, are these new techniques that people are coming up with? A lot of these are rehash of how we may have done things in the past and trying to evolve them. Is that the right way to make this better? Or in this new world, is there going to be something incredibly innovative that none of us are thinking about of how to write code today? Are those actually going to be the ones that win? We'll find out. This is the exciting part. To your point, David, we're just into this journey right now, and it is an exciting time to be a developer because there's so much changing. There's so much opportunity for advancement and the ability to have an impact as a developer on a project.
And I think what you touched on is a lot of what I've experienced in doing this myself. It becomes all about context. Like the more context I can give it, you mentioned, having past decisions, like documented somewhere that it can pull that forward using things like MCP, gives it context. The things we just, discussed happened prior in the chat, give it context for like how to do things a little bit better. So I do think that's going to be a big part of how we help shape it. I think we have another question.
And it's a very relevant question to the conversation you're having right now. We're coming out of a period of time where we've seen so much growth in Agile and the Agile process around software development and the concept that a user story was a reminder to have the conversations. Today, AIs don't have those conversations, and the generative model forces us back towards a text-based approach of how we do things versus necessarily a conversational one, right? How does this shift how we run projects, how we manage requirements, right? As we have tools now in AI that are vastly more text-driven in how they're engaging.
So I think that's a fantastic question. So I'll jump on that first, and then Bill, I agree with you. The move towards text has some potential sharp edges. One of the things that I've used before as an analogy, like if I said, we think in pictures, right? So if I say the word cat, I'm thinking of a cat. I say cat, you hear cat, you think of the picture of a cat, not the word CAT, but a picture. But the cat in my mind might be purple and fluffy, and in your mind might be black and pissed off, right? And so like we both said cat, but they were very different cats. And so that's the danger of moving towards solely text is context. Like if I said a hairy black cat, that looks pissed off, now we actually have closer representations because yours might be small and mine might be big, right? And so it becomes all about that iterative declaration with more and more fidelity that is typical of a conversation, right? And that's where we're communicating and building these images, these structures in each other's minds for a common understanding. Well, if we rely solely on some, genned text, there's potential that we've missed. And so it is something that I think we're really going to have to work on. Do user stories become user pictures? And we move to a more graphical base, and now the AI needs to get better at graphical interpretations. It maybe that's why wireframes are so useful. And obviously that can happen in the UX side, but then like what's that equivalent over on the architecture side or in the code world? Like, I don't know. That's a really interesting, thought exercise to walk through. How would we go about doing that?
Yeah, it's what's interesting as we talk through all of that. A lot of the systems today, a lot of the improvements are on that generative AI side of things. And we have to remember that's one part of AI. There's two other sides of AI that will come into play here of prediction and also perception. And the pictures are a good example of perception. AI, these coding assistants are going to have to give us some ways of bringing in perception and how do I perceive that picture of a cat and get a better understanding of how to define what the cat looks like. That's not going to come from text. That's the RAG side of things. That's the retrieval augmented. If I can describe it in text, AI can do a great job. I've got to get that perceptive system now to actually be able to do it. And we're a ways off from that. This is where the industry is going to evolve over time. There are systems that do that today, and they will get better, and we'll continue to use them in our development lifecycle. I want to go back, Tim, and make sure we're addressing the question. Can you repeat the question again? I just want to make sure we hit everything in that question because that one actually made me think for a few minutes. It was a really good question.
Yeah, so it really was, and I think that David's answer hit on many of the points of the agile space having had such a focus on the conversational aspects, and now the textual basis of the generative model that we're facing, and that in that the tension between things like the spec driven and the classically agile approach, right? One is much more design up front and specifying things in text and a lot more detail versus the reminder to have a conversation and the human interaction and the tension that this creates in how we go approach development.
There's something that, the get me a rock game that we all get to play sometimes with folks. I don't think that necessarily goes away, right? Where it's like, bring me a rock. And then it's like, no, not that rock. And you've got to go figure out, okay, what the heck are we talking about? How do we get on the same page? Which is a lot of what the conversation aspect was attempting to alleviate. I think that's going to continue, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's we generated something and we show it to them and they're like, no, that's not it. And we get to go back. But to the point that Bill made earlier, I think that our loops can get much tighter where we can do that in a quicker fashion and it feels more collaborative back and forth versus I went and built it and it was a big bang that went wah wah. And so that's where we want to be. We want to be mindful and appreciative of that.
I totally agree. You hit on the piece I wanted to hit on, which was that quicker iteration and getting more cycles with the users to actually be able to see it. Rather than going out and finding the rock, I can give you an AI description or an AI rendering of the rock that you wanted and see if it's the right one and make that cycle faster at the end of the day. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also there is an opportunity in here as we get more and more comfortable with having AI around us all the time. Do we move to where we're always recording the conversation, right? You have the transcription, and even still recognizing there is limitation of words, especially in the English language. We know there are certain words that aren't super helpful in creating clarity, but the ability to use transcription has been very powerful for us, not necessarily in this series or relevant to this series, but on our sales process side, where you saw those dots, the ability to record conversations, produce a transcript that ultimately can be transformed and used by Gen AI in building other artifacts becomes very, very helpful. Oftentimes, those artifacts then become the visualization of what it was we were talking about, and we can manipulate that visualization to make sure that we're getting the right cat.
Yep. Perfect.
So, Bill, I want to touch on one more thing. We talked about how, projects they're moving faster, right? With this. And so they can potentially wrap up sooner, right? And so maybe there aren't going to be as many people needed because the same amount of work is going to get done with smaller number of people.
Yeah, it's a good thing to be looking at because is there going to be enough work, or are we just going to let all developers go? And I'm going to be very clear. I don't see a vision. I don't think improving sees a vision where there's going to be less development work. There is Today there's too much of a demand from the business. Businesses are waiting for the tech side of the house to actually get the systems built, and they're wanting the next one. To me, actually gets exciting because we can get closer to a real agile situation where I can get you the solution quicker. You can start using it and get me feedback so we can actually go revise that system and create a new system more rapidly. I think that's what we're going to see is it's not going to, if anything, it's not going to slow down how many or reduce the number of developers we have because we're going to have more work that needs to get done, more demand, things that we didn't even think we could do previously, or the business didn't think we could go bite off because they were just way too big, audacious goals to go try to tackle. Those may now come into focus and be able to be a path that, hey, we can actually get this thing done in a reasonable amount of time. So let's go do it. And I think we'll start to see those changes and those needs from the business start to come forward of, hey, let's use that additional time we have now to get into bringing some of these things that we had not touched because we didn't want to touch it in the past.
Yeah. And I think we have maybe an interesting parallel or something we can look in the past when those of us that remember when Lotus 123 showed up, spreadsheets became a thing, as did automated bookkeeping, right? And so accountants back in the late 80s, there were roughly 500,000 folks in the accounting field. And they were like, hey, we don't have to do double entry accounting anymore and write it in a journal. We've got this automation that's going to make it way easier. It's going to eliminate all these accountants. We don't need these people anymore, to keep our books. Well, fast forward to just a couple of years ago, I think we were sitting right at 1.4 million accountants in the US. And there's schools talking about there's even more demand in the market than the universities can fulfill. So I think we'll probably see something similar where there's an adaptation of what does the role look like. You're not doing double entry journals anymore. You're doing higher level analyses. You are doing forecasts and putting together financial packages. That's just the next level of complexity. And so that work will expand to fill the capacity that we have.
Yeah, I would agree. This is a good point to also bring up but wait, if we don't do those activities, do we know how to do them anymore? Because this is something that I get asked a lot of times. If AI is doing these activities, we're going to forget how to do those activities. And I think this really comes into the discussion about the reviewing of what AI is doing, having an understanding. You still have to have the understanding of what's getting done to be able to look at it and say, hey, that's correct. So the high level view of this, I don't think we're going to be in that boat of, hey, AI is just doing everything and we become mindless idiots who don't know how to do anything anymore. We have to have the ability to go gather that information and leverage that information and leverage our experiences to actually help us ensure that the right things are being done by AI.
So I hear you saying I can give up remembering how to make my slide rule work, but I don't know how the math is done.
Yes. Yeah, you got get the high level concept. Make sure you understand the high level concept and how to apply it if you had to. But at the end of the day, yeah, that slide rule. I haven't used my slide rule in 40 years probably, so I feel
Awesome.
pretty safe that I don't need that skill anymore.
Yep. So why don't you take us through what this talk series is going to focus on? What's the business problem that we're going to tackle here through the rest of the month?
Perfect. Yeah, let's hop into it because this gets exciting as we looked and put this together. Part of this was we want to bring to the audience how do we actually build out a solution using AI. And this wasn't let's just go have it write code or we'll just write tests. We want to bring the whole development life cycle together. So let's start with, first of all, what our business problem is. Let's make sure everybody understands that because it's going to come up over the rest of the series. So this will be a point you may want to come back to. If you forget what we're working on, come back to this to understand. So we have a system called Engage. It's our platform that allows collaboration between our managers / we call them path coaches and our consultants. So our consultants have skills. They're constantly working on improving their skills. They have goals of where they want to get stronger. And then we track progress inside of Engage. So Engage today understands these goals. It has a high level of the plan and has the ability to say, hey, yeah, you have this skill and you've gone from a 1 to a 2 in this skill. We use this then, the tool is used to actually understand what is it that we're going to need to go do on our next project. Let me make sure I can see everything here. Sorry. So we now have to understand what can this developer do, both the technical skills and the ability from a development process. What are they capable of doing to actually go apply this? And what we've realized is we don't have this idea of inside of Engage business. This business development role doesn't exist in Engage. The ability to pair up, I've got these skills in order to be successful on a Java replatforming. I need to have all of these other skills combined in a way that actually has a higher level business development role, is what we call it. This ability to have this role that I might have on a project that I can go fulfill that role. It's not enough to know I can write Java code. There's other skills I have to have around that. So we have defined what we're calling business development roles of these collections of skills need to be successful on an engagement, on a project for our clients. And so the whole idea of this series is how do we add to an existing system, Engage, this concept of business development roles and actually get the UI in place to let people define what the business development roles are and then actually manipulate the data to start giving a report. At the end of the day, what we want to build is what you see on the bottom right-hand side here, is to be able to say, with all the skills that I have as a consultant, this is how strong I would be in this type of a role, is what we're trying to show here, based upon my skills and my knowledge and my past experience. So let the path coach be able to get this view of a consultant, and we will build out all of those pieces, the UX, the design. We're going to write the code. We're going to write the tests. We'll update our CI/CD pipelines for this system, and we'll update all the database schema to support this new feature in the next 4 weeks.
Awesome. And I think you were, yep.
Yep, one more. So this gives a little bit more clarity on what this looks like today in the system. You'll see this as it starts to evolve over the next few weeks. Today, this is all we have for skills. These are the high-level skills that I have, what rating I am at, and I can go add my skills and go further. We don't see anything around this business development role within the system. So this is truly a brand new feature that we're bringing into the system. Nothing on this has been started. So that's the disclaimer here is you're going to see it live as we're developing it with you. You get to see the goods and the bads, and I'm sure we'll have some uglies, but you'll get to see those and we'll all learn together of how capable is AI as we go through this journey over the next 4 weeks.
So yeah, we're excited. Thank you for joining Bill and I as we talked through this. And we hope that you will come back for these follow-on sessions. They are not going to be smoke and mirrors. It's going to be raw and real, and you will see it as we progress. So those upcoming talks, we have October 8th, we're going to start with UX. So we'll be taking a look at how we create the user experience that we want with this. Then we will jump down into building out the test code and how we go back and forth between the code and tests. Then we'll talk about the platform and what is it we need to adjust in the CI/CD and that infrastructure as code. And then we will wrap up with the data engineering and the analytics that will come out of the back to be able to show this feature. So I'm really excited for us. I hope that you will join us on this journey as we walk through each of these steps and show you ways that you can be using AI to help in your everyday coding. So we look forward to the series. Thank you again, Bill. Thank you, Tim and team. Do we have any final questions? Excellent. Well, I hope that everybody has a wonderful rest of their day. Thank you.